Honestly, watching the opening minutes of this video, I feel a surge of revulsion at the heartless ingratitude of those who gain a bit of status and immediately turn their backs on their past. It is laughable to witness a husband boasting about his talent, nonchalantly bringing a mistress home to humiliate his devoted wife, unaware that the very seat he occupies was built on the silent sacrifices of the woman he is now casting out. My verdict on this man is one of absolute contempt. This is a testament to moral decay and an uneducated lifestyle. Using borrowed success to trample on a partner's dignity is a despicable act that directly betrays the most basic human values. He fancies himself a powerful figure, but in reality, he is merely a puppet cutting his own strings.
When I opened the door to my house, 3 days earlier than planned from my vacation, the first thing that hit me was the sight of chunks of drywall on the floor and the loud sound of a sledgehammer pounding against my living room wall. The smell of fresh paint filled the air, mixing with the dust that floated around like small gray clouds. My heart stopped for a second. This was my house, my sanctuary, the place I had built with my own 2 hands and the sweat of so many years of hard work. Tiana, my daughter-in-law, was standing in the center of what used to be my living room, holding a roller that was dripping bright white paint onto my newly refinished hardwood floors. She was wearing one of my old aprons as if she owned the place. Next to her, Marcus, my own son, was moving my antique furniture into a corner as if they were just obstacles in the way. Little Lyric, my 8-year-old granddaughter, ran between them, her hands smeared with paint, laughing as if the whole thing were a fun game. I stood paralyzed in the entryway, my overnight bag still in my hand, trying to process the scene. The walls of my living room, which I had painted a soft buttercream color just 6 months ago, now showed patchy, uneven swaths of blinding white. My favorite armchair, the one where I sat every afternoon to catch the news after work, was covered with a stained plastic tarp. "Mom," Marcus said when he saw me, without showing a hint of surprise or guilt. "You're back early." His words sounded more like an accusation than a greeting, as if I had made some terrible mistake by showing up in my own home. Tiana turned toward me with that fake smile that never reached her eyes, the one I had learned to recognize over the 5 years she'd been married to my son. "Eleanor, how great that you're here," she said, setting the roller on top of a paint can she'd placed right on my center coffee table. "I'm just getting some upgrades done before we move in." Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. Move in. Nobody had asked me. Nobody had consulted me about them coming to live with me, and certainly nobody had asked permission to tear up my walls and change everything to suit their fancy. "What are you talking about?" I managed to ask, though my voice came out much weaker than I wanted. Marcus walked over and put his arm around Tiana's shoulders in that protective gesture he used to reserve for me when he was a boy and someone bothered him at school. Now that same arm was excluding me, making me feel like an intruder in my own home. "Mom, we talked about this. Tiana is pregnant again, and our apartment is way too small now. We need more space for the family." Talked about this? I remembered a very different conversation, where they mentioned they were looking for a bigger house, and I, like the fool I was, told them that if they needed some financial help with the down payment, we could see what I could do. Never once did we talk about them moving into my house. "Grandma, look what we're doing!" Lyric shouted, running toward me with her little hands outstretched, showing me her palms covered in white paint. "Dad says I'm going to have my own room here with you now." My granddaughter hugged my legs, leaving tiny white prints on my trousers, and I felt my heart break. How could I explain to an 8-year-old girl that her parents were invading her grandmother's house without permission? How could I tell her that this was wrong when for her it was just the excitement of getting a new room? "Lyric, go wash your hands," Tiana told her, using that sweet voice she only used when other people were around, a tone very different from the dry, cold one she used with me when we were alone. While my granddaughter ran toward the bathroom, Marcus moved closer to me. I could see in his eyes the look that was no longer my little boy's, but that of a 32-year-old man who had decided his mother no longer had the right to an opinion about her own life. "Mom, I understand this is a surprise, but we thought it would be better to start the remodeling while you were gone. That way, we wouldn't bother you with the noise and the mess. We wanted to give you a surprise. A surprise. He called destroying my house without my consent a surprise. He called deciding for me where I was going to live the rest of my life, who I was going to share my space, my privacy, and my peace with a surprise. I looked around once more. My small breakfast table where I ate every morning had been shoved against the window. The curtains I had carefully chosen were thrown in a heap in a corner. They had even taken down the framed photograph of my mother, that black and white picture, the only thing I had left of her, and propped it against the wall as if it were trash. "And my room?" I asked, dreading the answer. "Oh, that one is going to be perfect for the new baby," Tiana replied, rubbing her stomach, which barely showed a small curve. "It's right next to the master suite. That way, we can hear if they cry at night. You can take the back room, the one you used for storage. We've already cleaned it out, and a twin bed will fit perfectly." The back room, my storage closet, the place where I kept the Christmas boxes, winter clothes, and old documents. They wanted to send me to live in a space that was smaller than the closet in their current apartment. They wanted to turn me into a tenant in my own home, a grandmother who should be grateful for the corner they gave her. "This cannot stand," I muttered, more to myself than to them. "What did you say, Mom?" Marcus looked at me with that impatient expression he had developed over the past few years, as if my opinions were the whims of an old woman who didn't understand the modern world, as if my feelings were obstacles to their perfect plans. "Nothing," I replied, because at that moment, I didn't have the strength to fight. I didn't have arguments prepared for this invasion I never saw coming. "I'm just tired from the trip." Tiana smiled that victorious smile that appeared on her face every time I yielded, every time I chose family peace over my own rights. "Of course, Eleanor. It must be hard to come back and find so many changes. But you'll see. When we're done, it's going to be beautiful. This house has so much potential." Potential. My house, where I had lived for 15 years, where I had raised Marcus after the divorce, where I had cried my sorrows and celebrated my small victories, only had potential when she decided to transform it according to her vision. I dragged my suitcase up the stairs toward my room, and when I opened the door, I found boxes piled everywhere. My things, my clothes, my books, all packed up as if they had already decided I had no right to my personal space. On the bed were more boxes labeled in Tiana's handwriting. Baby clothes, new toys, nursery decor. I sat on the edge of the bed between the boxes that contained my life, and for the first time in many years, I cried. I cried for the betrayal of my own son, for the audacity of my daughter-in-law, for my own cowardice in not defending myself from the very first moment. It was in that moment, sitting in my room-turned-storage unit, that I made a decision. They had started this war, but I was going to decide how it ended. And that is how everything fell apart. But let me go back to the beginning, to how a 62-year-old woman came to this moment of family betrayal, so you can understand why what happened next was not revenge, but justice. My name is Eleanor Riggins, and I am 62 years old. I've been working since I was 14, when my father decided that women didn't need an education and pulled me out of school so I could help at home. I have cleaned offices, cared for other people's children, sold soul food on the weekends, sewn clothes until my fingers bled, and done everything a woman has to do to survive without depending on anyone. When Marcus was 6 and his father abandoned us for a woman 20 years younger, I didn't have time to cry. I had to pay the rent, buy food, and make sure my son didn't feel the emptiness that man had left behind. I worked during the day cleaning a dental clinic, and at night I sewed dresses for high school proms and graduations. My hands were always busy, always hurting, but they never stopped. The house where I live now, I bought 15 years ago, when Marcus was 17. It wasn't big, it wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. Every monthly payment represented extra hours of work. Every dollar saved meant less on my plate, so he could have new sneakers or books for school. When I finally received the keys, I cried so hard that the seller offered me a glass of water, thinking I was ill. During all those years, Marcus was my reason for living. He was a sweet, smart boy who helped me with chores and told me that when he grew up, he would buy me a nicer house. On weekends, when I was too tired to cook, he would make mac and cheese and bring it to me in bed, saying it was my turn to rest. He finished high school with good grades and got a job at a construction company. He couldn't go to college because we needed the money, but he was always responsible. He always helped me with the household expenses. We were a team, him and me, against the world. Everything changed 6 years ago when he met Tiana. She worked as a receptionist in a doctor's office and had that artificial beauty that comes from expensive injections and treatments. She wore clothes that cost more than my monthly paycheck and spoke as if the world owed her something just for existing. From the beginning, I knew she didn't like me, not out of motherly jealousy, but because I saw the way she looked at me, as if I were an obstacle in her plans. When they came for dinner, she sat at my table criticizing the food, saying it had too much salt or the chicken was overcooked. She never offered to help wash the dishes and always found excuses so Marcus wouldn't come visit me alone. "Your mom is too intense," she would tell Marcus when she thought I couldn't hear her. "You need to set boundaries. You're not a child anymore." And Marcus, my boy who used to defend me from everyone, started to change. He stopped coming on Sundays to eat with me. He stopped calling me every day to ask how I was. He stopped being the son I had raised and became the husband Tiana was molding. When they got married 5 years ago, I paid for half the wedding. I spent the savings I had put aside for my retirement because I wanted my son to be happy. Tiana chose everything. The dress that cost $8,000, the flowers that cost another $5,000, the event venue that cost $20,000. I was just the mother of the groom who paid the bills and smiled for the photos. The first time they asked me for money was 6 months after the wedding. They needed $10,000 for the down payment on a new car because, according to Tiana, she couldn't arrive at her job on public transit like just anyone. I lent them the money I had managed to save by working extra hours cleaning offices on weekends. They never paid me back. The second time, it was another $8,000 for the security deposit on their apartment because the place they were living in was too modest for a woman of Tiana's class. Again, I opened my piggy bank, literally because I kept bills in a coffee can hidden under my bed. They never paid that back either. When Lyric was born 8 years ago, I was the one who stayed with Tiana at the hospital because Marcus had to work. I was the one who cared for her during her recovery, who got up in the middle of the night to change diapers and prepare bottles. I was the one who bought the crib, the stroller, the baby clothes, and who paid for the first few months of diapers and formula. "It's your obligation as a grandmother," Tiana would tell me when I arrived at their house after working 10 hours, carrying bags of groceries and baby products. Family helps family, but that help was always one way. When I got the flu and spent a week in bed with a fever, neither of them came to check on me. When my refrigerator broke down and I had to buy a new one, they didn't offer me a single dollar of the thousands I had lent them. During these years, I have worked harder than ever to maintain my independence. Besides my cleaning job at the clinic, I started making gourmet BBQ rib platters on the weekends to sell at the local farmers market. Every Sunday, I got up at 4 in the morning to prepare the dry rub, smoke the ribs, and prepare the sides. Then, I hauled my heavy pots and coolers to the stall I rented for $200 a day. I sold ribs, mac and cheese, and collard greens. My hands were always stained with sauce and rub. My feet always ached from standing all day. But every dollar I earned was mine. No one could ask to borrow it. No one could tell me how to spend it. With those dollars, I bought my new furniture 3 years ago. With those dollars, I painted my house and fixed the yard. With those dollars, I allowed myself some small luxuries that I had denied myself for decades. A bigger television, high-quality sheets, a coffee maker that brewed my coffee exactly how I liked it. Marcus and Tiana viewed my improvements with a mix of surprise and annoyance, as if they couldn't believe that the woman who had always given them everything had something of her own, something they hadn't borrowed or claimed as theirs. "Mom, you're spending a lot of money on unnecessary things," Marcus would tell me when he saw my small purchases. "You should be saving for your old age." But when they needed something, there I was with my wallet open. When Lyric needed new school shoes, when their water heater broke down, when Tiana wanted a new dress for her sister's wedding, I always had money for them. I just never had the right to spend it on myself. Last year, I decided to take the first vacation of my adult life. 61 years of working nonstop, and I was finally going to give myself the luxury of resting for a week. I rented a small cabin in the mountains, a simple, clean place where I could read, walk, and not hear the phone ringing with Marcus and Tiana's constant crises. "A vacation?" Tiana asked me, as if I had said I was going to the moon. "Don't you think that's a bit selfish? Lyric is going to miss you a lot." But I stood firm. For the first time in decades, I said no. I went on my vacation with a clear conscience, thinking that a week of absence would make them appreciate everything I did for them. I never imagined they would use that week to plan how to take over my house. Now, sitting among the boxes that contained my life, packed without my permission, I understood that I had created a monster. By giving Marcus everything, by never teaching him to respect my boundaries, by allowing Tiana to treat me like the family housekeeper, I had taught them that I had no rights, only obligations. But the monsters one creates, one can also destroy. And I was about to remind them who Eleanor Riggins really was. I bought this house when I was 47. After 15 years of renting damp rooms and roach-infested apartments where Marcus and I lived like nomads, moving every time the landlord raised the rent or decided to sell. I was tired of my son growing up without roots, without a place he could truly call home. I found it one Saturday morning after selling my ribs at the market. It was a small house in a solid middle-class neighborhood. Not fancy, but decent. It had 2 bedrooms, 1 full bathroom, a living room that connected to the kitchen, and a small backyard where I dreamed of planting tomatoes and herbs. The price was $250,000. For a woman earning $3,200 a month cleaning the dental office, that amount sounded like $1 million. But the seller, an older gentleman named Mr. Sterling Davenport, looked me straight in the eye when I told him I didn't have enough for the down payment. "How much have you saved?" he asked me as we walked through the empty house. $25,000, I replied with some embarrassment, because it had taken me 3 years to accumulate that amount, saving $100 to $200 every week in my coffee can. "And do you have steady work?" "Yes, for 8 years at the same clinic, and I sell barbecue on the weekends." Mr. Davenport thought for a moment, looking out at the yard where wild weeds grew, and where I was already imagining Marcus playing ball. "Look, ma'am, I started from the bottom, too. My wife and I raised 4 children in this house, and now they are all married, and we are moving in with our eldest daughter. This house needs a family that will care for it with love, not investors who will flip it in 2 years." He offered me a deal that changed my life, $25,000 down, and monthly payments of $1,500 for 12 years. No bank interest, no complicated paperwork, just a simple contract between 2 people who understood each other. "But there's one condition," he said before I could answer. "If you ever can't make a payment, call me before you fall behind. And if you ever want to sell, you give me the first opportunity to buy it back." I accepted without a second thought. That night, Marcus and I celebrated by eating pizza on the floor of our new living room, using boxes as a table. He was 17 and as excited as I was. For the first time in his life, he was going to have his own room, a place where he could put up his basketball posters and study without the neighbors next door blasting music. The first few years were tough. $1,500 a month meant that out of my $3,200 paycheck, I only had $1,700 left for food, utilities, transport, and everything else. Many nights we ate beans and rice, and I told Marcus it was my favorite meal so he wouldn't feel bad. I worked cleaning the clinic Monday through Friday, and on Saturdays and Sundays, I got up at 4 in the morning to prepare the BBQ. I bought the meat, the spices, the sides, all in bulk to save a few dollars. My hands were always raw from so much work, and my back ached from leaning over the smokers. But every platter I sold brought me closer to owning my home completely. Marcus helped me on the weekends. He carried the heavy coolers to the market, helped me serve the customers, and counted the money at the end of the day. We were partners, a team working toward the same dream. "Mom," he would say as we walked back home with the empty coolers, "when I finish school, I'm going to get a good job and help you pay off the house faster." And he kept his promise. When he graduated high school, he started working in construction and gave me $200 every month toward the house payments. With his help, I managed to pay a few months ahead, and even bought some new furniture to replace the second-hand pieces we'd started with. The house slowly became our sanctuary. I painted the walls cheerful colors, planted flowers in the yard, and put up curtains in all the windows. Every improvement was paid for with my BBQ money. Every dollar spent was an investment in our future. When I finally made the last payment 3 years ago, Mr. Davenport came personally to hand me the deed. He was 85, but still an elegant, formal man. "Congratulations, Eleanor," he said, handing me the papers that officially made me the owner. "This house is completely yours now. Enjoy it for many years." That night, I threw a small party. I invited my neighbors, Marcus and Tiana, who had just gotten married. I prepared a feast of my best soul food and bought a cake at the bakery. It was my celebration, my moment of triumph after 12 years of sacrifice. Marcus was proud of me. He hugged me tight and said, "Mom, you did it. You finally have your place in the world." But Tiana didn't share his enthusiasm. The entire evening she criticized the house, saying it was too small, that it was in a modest neighborhood, and that the new houses in the subdivisions were much nicer. "I don't understand why it took you so long to buy something so simple," she said as I cut the cake. "My dad bought his house in 2 years, and it's much bigger." I didn't answer her because I didn't want to ruin my celebration, but her words hurt. To her, my house was small and modest. To me, it was proof that a single woman could achieve anything if she worked hard enough. Over the next few months, I noticed Tiana always had comments about my house, that the furniture was old, that the kitchen needed remodeling, that the bathroom was too small, as if she were evaluating a property she planned to buy. "Eleanor," she would say with that fake smile, "you should really modernize this house. It has a lot of potential, but it needs investment." I was constantly investing in my house. With my BBQ money, I replaced the water heater, painted the bedrooms every 2 years, fixed roof leaks, and replaced the faucets in the bathroom. They weren't spectacular upgrades, but they kept my house in excellent condition. Last year, when I decided to remodel the kitchen, Tiana got more excited than I did. She came over every day while the workers installed the new cabinets and the stainless steel range that I had bought with 6 months of my savings. "Oh, Eleanor, your kitchen is looking so beautiful," she would say, touching the new surfaces as if they were hers. "You could cook some serious feasts here for a big family." I didn't understand the comment until now. She wasn't admiring my kitchen. She was planning to use it. When I left for my vacation last week, I gave them the keys because Lyric wanted to come and water the plants in my backyard. It was something we had done before. She would come with Marcus on Sundays, and they would play in the yard while I taught her to care for the tomatoes and flowers. "Don't worry, Eleanor," Tiana told me when I handed her the keys. "We'll take good care of your house." Now I understand that when she said care, she meant take ownership. That when she looked at my new kitchen, she didn't see the effort of a 62-year-old woman, but the place where she would cook for her new, expanded family. The house I bought with hands calloused from making BBQ for 12 years. The house I paid for with every dollar I managed to save by denying myself small pleasures. The house where I raised my son, and where I planned to live out my last years in peace. Now it was the spoils of war for a daughter-in-law who never valued anyone else's sacrifice. But there was something Tiana didn't know when she decided to invade my property. The deed to this house is in my name, completely paid off, with no debts, no mortgages. And although Mr. Davenport passed away last year, his son, Sterling Davenport Jr., escritor, is a lawyer and knows the whole history of how I bought this house very well. It was time to remind everyone that Eleanor Riggins was not a defenseless old woman whom they could displace from her own home. She was a woman who had fought all her life to have something of her own, and she was not going to let them take it without a fight. After 12 years of religiously paying $1,500 monthly, I thought I could finally relax a little. But life taught me that a single woman can never lower her guard. The house needed constant maintenance, and I was the only one responsible for every clogged pipe, every stained wall, every problem that popped up. The first year after finishing the payments, the water heater broke. It was December, and we didn't have hot water for showers. The plumber charged me $1,500 for a new heater, money I had to take from my emergency savings. Marcus had just gotten married and was barely making ends meet with his own expenses, so I couldn't ask him for help. I got up every day at 5 in the morning to get to the dental clinic on time. After 8 hours of cleaning exam rooms, sterilizing instruments, and mopping floors, I returned home at 3 in the afternoon. But my day didn't end there. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, I worked part-time cleaning an accounting office, which gave me an extra $800 a month. Weekends were for the BBQ. On Friday nights, I bought the meat at the market, taking advantage of the lower prices when the butchers wanted to move product before closing. 30 pounds of pork, 20 pounds of chicken, spices, rubs, tomatoes, onions, garlic. I hauled the heavy bags on the bus because I didn't have my own car. Saturday started at 4 in the morning. First, I put the meat in the smoker, which I had bought secondhand. While it was smoking, I prepared the sides that had to be just right, neither too dry nor too runny. My hands moved automatically after so many years, but the work was still heavy. Every step required precision. A spoonful of mac and cheese into the containers, a fair portion of meat, and the correct wrapping to keep the heat in. On a good day, I prepared 200 platters. The rough work left marks on my hands, and the dough got stuck under my nails. Smoking took 2 hours. While the meat was cooking, I prepared the sauces, a sweet, tangy barbecue sauce, a hot vinegar-based mop sauce, and a special spicy kick sauce that was my customer's favorite. Each sauce had its secret, its exact point of salt and spices that I had perfected over years. By 6 in the morning, everything was ready. I loaded the steaming pots and coolers, the sauces, the disposable plates, the napkins, and everything else I needed for my market stall. Each cooler weighed 20 pounds when full, and I had to carry 4 of them, plus the accessories. My arms and back ached, but I had no choice. The stall cost me $200 a day, but it was a great location near the main entrance of the market. Customers arrived starting at 7 in the morning, workers buying breakfast, families taking home platters for lunch, ladies who didn't want to cook on Sundays. "Hot barbecue!" I shouted for 8 hours straight. "Ribs, chicken, mac and cheese!" My feet swelled from standing all day on the cold concrete. In the winter, my hands got numb from the cold. In the summer, the steam from the pots and the heat of the sun left me soaked in sweat, but every sale brought me closer to my goals. One platter cost $20. On a good day, I sold out and earned $1,600. Discounting the costs of ingredients, rent for the stall, and transport, I was left with $1,000 in net profit. It wasn't much, but multiplied by 4 weekends a month, it meant $4,000 extra. With that money, I was able to paint the house for the first time after buying it. I chose a soft cream color for the living room, light green for my bedroom, and cheerful yellow for the kitchen. I did all the work myself, waking up early before going to the clinic to paint one wall each day. My hands were stained with paint for weeks, but it was worth it to see my house transformed. I also changed the living room floors. The old tile was cracked and stained. I saved for 6 months to buy laminate flooring that looked like wood but cost half the price. The installer showed me how to lay it, and I finished the last few rooms myself to save on labor. Every improvement was an individual battle. When the bathroom pipes clogged, I learned to use chemical drain cleaners. When the faucet started dripping, I bought replacement parts, and internet videos taught me how to repair them. When a window was broken by a neighbor's ball, I measured the glass and went personally to the glass shop to have a new one cut. Marcus came on Sundays to help me with the heavier jobs. Together, we fixed the roof when it started leaking, installed shelves in the bedrooms, and painted the front of the house. Those were good moments when I felt like we were still a team working toward the same goal. But then he married Tiona, and the helpful visits became less frequent. She always had plans for the weekends, weddings, baptisms, gatherings with her friends. Marcus started arriving in a rush, helping me for an hour, and then leaving quickly because they had commitments. "Mom, just hire someone to help you," he would tell me when I asked him to help move the furniture to clean the house thoroughly. "You're not up for this heavy work anymore." But hiring help cost money, which I preferred to invest in permanent improvements. Besides, no one was going to care for my house the way I cared for it. No one would clean every corner with the same love. No one would notice the small details that made the difference. The BBQ remained my source of extra income, but the work grew heavier with age. My hands were no longer as agile. My back tired faster. My feet ached more after standing all day. Some Sundays, I came home so exhausted that I fell asleep on the sofa with my clothes on, but I couldn't stop. Every extra dollar meant independence. It meant being able to fix what broke without asking anyone for help. It meant not being a burden to my son, who already had his own financial responsibilities. Last year, I decided to remodel the kitchen completely. It was the most ambitious project I had undertaken since buying the house. The old cabinets were worn out, the stove was 20 years old, and the sink was permanently stained. I saved for 8 months, working extra hours at the clinic and making BBQ, even when I was sick with the flu. Every dollar was kept in a shoebox under my bed. I meticulously noted in a notebook how much I had saved and how much I still needed to reach the $15,000 required for the complete remodel. I hired Jose Diaz, a carpenter recommended by my neighbors. He was an honest man who gave me fair prices and worked with care. For 3 weeks, my kitchen was a chaos of dust and tools, but I was thrilled watching the heart of my home transform. The new cabinets were made of cherry wood, elegant but not ostentatious. The stainless steel range had 6 burners and a spacious oven where I could bake 2 trays of sweet bread at the same time. The double sink allowed me to wash dishes on one side while soaking pots on the other. When the work was finished, I invited Marcus and Tiana to see the result. Marcus was genuinely impressed and congratulated me on the transformation. But Tiana toured the kitchen with a calculating look, touching the cabinets, opening the doors, testing the burners on the stove. "Oh, Eleanor, what a functional kitchen," she said. And there was something in her tone I didn't like. "You can cook for a lot of people here." At the time, I didn't understand the comment. Now I know that she was already planning to cook for her family in my new kitchen, already imagining herself owning the cabinets that I had paid for with months of 4 a.m. wake-ups making BBQ. All that investment, all that effort, all those years of sacrifice were now in the hands of a woman who believed she had a right to what she had never earned. The first time Tiana saw my fully renovated house was 8 months ago, when I finally finished paying for all the improvements I had been making for 3 years. It wasn't a mansion, but it looked like something out of a magazine. Freshly painted walls, shining laminate floors, the new kitchen with its cherry cabinets, and the yard I had transformed into a small paradise with roses, geraniums, and an herb garden. I had invested more than $10,000 of my own savings, money I earned selling BBQ under the sun and rain, for years. Every dollar represented hours of work, early mornings when my body begged for rest, and Sundays when I couldn't relax because I had to be at the market earning a living. I decided to host a small celebration. It was the first time in my life I had something truly finished, something I could be completely proud of. I invited my neighbors, some colleagues from the clinic, and of course Marcus and his family. I prepared a special dinner, my famous smoked beef brisket that I'd been smoking since the early morning, saffron rice, refried beans with cheese, and handmade tortillas. For dessert, I bought a cake from the best bakery in the neighborhood, one that cost $60, but was worth it for my personal celebration. The guests arrived on time and were amazed by the improvements. Lucille, my next-door neighbor, couldn't stop touching the new kitchen cabinets. "Oh, Eleanor, what a beautiful transformation," she said, admiring the appliances. "It looks like the kitchens in fancy homes." My co-workers were also impressed. They knew how hard I had worked to achieve this because they saw me arrive at the clinic with stained hands on Mondays after my weekend BBQ marathons. "Dr. Riggins," Lorena, the receptionist, joked. Now you can truly retire in your palace." I felt complete, fulfilled, as if I had finally reached a goal I had set for myself since buying the house. For the first time in decades, I had no outstanding debts, no urgent repairs to make, and no need to worry about the next unexpected expense. Marcus arrived with Tiana and Lyric just as we were starting dinner. He looked genuinely proud of me. He hugged me tight and told me the house looked incredible. "Mom, I can't believe everything you accomplished," he said, as we walked through the house together. "This is the result of your hard work and dedication." Lyric ran excitedly through the house, exploring every corner as if it were an amusement park. She was fascinated by the new kitchen, opening and closing the cabinets, admiring how the surfaces shone. "Grandma, your house looks like a movie set," she told me, with those big eyes full of admiration that melted my heart. But Tiana had a different attitude. She walked through the house with a serious, evaluating expression, as if she were taking inventory. She touched the freshly painted walls, opened the closet doors, and checked the bathroom finishes with a tension that made me uncomfortable. "Eleanor," she said when we were in my bedroom, "you invested a lot of money in this house. Aren't you scared living alone with so many nice things?" I didn't understand the comment. Why would I be scared living in my own house with the things I had purchased with my own labor? "No, honey," I replied. "This is my home. I feel safe here." "But you're getting older, Eleanor. At your age, wouldn't it be better to live with company? You know, so someone can look after you if you get sick or if anything happens." Her words landed on me like a bucket of cold water in the middle of my celebration. I was 62, not 85. I was perfectly healthy, worked full-time, and had cared for myself for decades. Why was she talking about me as if I were a helpless old woman? "I'm perfectly fine alone, thank you," I replied firmly. During dinner, I noticed Tiana kept making strange comments. When the guests complimented the new kitchen, she commented, "Yes, it's very nice, but it's too big for one person. You could easily cook for a whole family here without any issues." When they admired the spacious living room, she added, "Of course, this space would be great for more furniture. You could fit a playpen perfectly here next to the window." Every comment was like a small invasion, as if she were redesigning my house in her mind, planning how to use every corner for her own purposes. After dinner, when the other guests had left, Marcus, Tiana, and Lyric stayed a little longer. I was washing dishes in my new sink when I heard Tiana speaking in a low voice to Marcus in the living room. "Look at all this wasted space," she was saying. "Your mom lives alone in a house that could shelter an entire family." "It's her house, honey," Marcus replied, but his voice sounded hesitant. "Of course it's her house, but think about it. We pay rent every month. Lyric doesn't have a yard to play in, and your mom is here all alone in a house that she doesn't even need that big anymore." I stayed still by the sink, pretending to wash the same plate while I listened to every word. "What are you proposing?" Marcus asked. "Nothing yet. I'm just saying it would be convenient for everyone if we lived together. We would take care of her, she would have company, and Lyric would grow up with her grandmother. We'd all win." I came out of the kitchen with wet hands, pretending I hadn't heard anything. "Are you leaving now?" I asked with the most natural smile I could muster. "Yes, Eleanor, it's late, and I have work tomorrow," Tiana replied. But she looked at me differently, as if she had just confirmed something in her mind. I couldn't sleep that night. Tiana's words repeated in my head like a broken record. There was something calculating in the way she evaluated my house, something predatory in her comments about the wasted space. In the following days, she started visiting me more frequently, always with excuses. Lyric wanted to see Grandma. They were passing through the area and decided to say hello. She needed the phone number of the plumber who had fixed my pipes. But I noticed her eyes scanning every room, how she opened cabinets as if she were familiarizing herself with the space, how she visually measured where a crib would fit in my bedroom or a desk would go in the room I used for seasonal clothes storage. "Oh, Eleanor," she said, admiring my kitchen for the 10th time. "You're so lucky to have such a spacious kitchen. In our apartment, the three of us barely fit, and now with the new baby coming." It was the first time she mentioned being pregnant. She said it casually, like commenting on the weather, but I saw Marcus tense up when he heard her. "Are you expecting another baby?" I asked, genuinely surprised. Yes, but it's very recent. I only found out a week ago, she replied, touching her stomach with that smile I had learned to distrust. That night, Marcus called me on the phone. Mom, I wanted to tell you about the baby personally, but Tiana jumped the gun. I'm very happy for you, son. How do you both feel? Excited, but also worried. The apartment is going to be too small with 2 kids. There it was, the conversation Tiana had been preparing for weeks. The moment my son would ask me for what she had decided was hers by right. Mom, Marcus continued, what would you think if we moved in with you? It would only be temporary until we find a bigger house. And that's when I understood that my celebration a month ago hadn't been the end of a project, but the beginning of an invasion. That every dollar I invested in improving my house, every hour I worked to make it beautiful, had actually been an involuntary investment in my daughter-in-law's future home. When Marcus asked me over the phone if they could temporarily move in with me, my first reaction was silence. A long, heavy silence that he interpreted as consideration, but which was actually shock. After 62 years of life, I had learned that when someone says temporary, especially concerning housing, it almost always means permanent. Mom, are you still there? Marcus asked after a few seconds. Yes, son, I'm here. I'm just thinking. Look, I know it's a lot to ask, but we really need more space. Tiana is pregnant and Lyric is growing. Our apartment only has 1 bedroom and we can barely fit a queen bed and a twin. I understood their problem. But I didn't understand why my house was their automatic solution. In this city, there were hundreds of apartments and rental homes that could solve their situation without invading my personal space. Have you looked for a bigger place to rent? I asked. Yes, Mom, but everything is outrageously expensive. A 2-bedroom apartment costs at least $2,500 a month, and we can barely afford the $1,500 we pay now. $1,500 was exactly what I earned at the dental clinic working full-time. To them, $2,500 was a lot of money, but to me, it represented my complete economic independence. Well, couldn't you look for something further from the center? Surely there are cheaper options. Mom, don't you understand? Tiana can't be living just anywhere, especially now that she's pregnant. She needs to be in a safe place, close to good hospitals and schools for Lyric. There was that phrase again, the one I had heard for 5 years. Tiana needs. As if her needs were more important than anyone else's, including mine. Son, I understand your situation, but this house is small. 4 people and soon 5 wouldn't fit comfortably. Mom, your house has 2 bedrooms, a large living room, and the back room that you could use as your private space. We would take the master bedroom for ourselves and the baby. Lyric would take the other bedroom, and you would be very comfortable in the back room. I was speechless. Not only did they want to move into my house, but they had already assigned all the rooms without consulting me. I, the homeowner, the woman who had paid every dollar for that property, would be relegated to the smallest room, the one I used as storage. Marcus, that little room doesn't have windows, just a small skylight. It's not a place to live. Oh, Mom, don't exaggerate. We can put a fan in there, a nice rug, and it will be very cozy. Besides, think about it. You would have your granddaughter every day. You could help with the new baby, and we would take care of you in your old age. Old age. That word again. As if at 62, I were already a decrepit elderly woman who needed caretakers. Son, I don't need to be taken care of. I'm perfectly fine alone. Mom, don't be proud. Everyone needs help, and family should stick together. Family sticking together. What a beautiful phrase to describe a planned invasion. I need to think about it, I told him, because I didn't have prepared arguments for a conversation I never expected to have. Sure, Mom, take your time, but not too much, because we already told our landlord we're moving next month. They had already told him without waiting for my answer, without even confirming that I agreed, as if, what do you mean you already told him? Well, good apartments rent out quickly. Mom, we couldn't wait for you to decide because we might have been left with nothing. I didn't sleep that night. I walked through my house as if seeing it for the first time, imagining what it would be like to have 4 other people living in my space. Marcus and Tiana in my bedroom, using my master bath, sleeping in the bed where I had dreamed of resting peacefully after so many years of work. Lyric in the second bedroom, which I had converted into a small office where I paid bills and kept my important documents. And me, expelled to the storage room like a tolerated lodger in my own house. The next day, Tiana came alone with Lyric. She said she came to pick up some vitamins she had forgotten, but immediately started surveying the house more closely than ever. "Eleanor, have you talked to Marcus about the move yet?" "Tiana, I need to be honest with you. I'm not comfortable with the idea." Her expression changed immediately. The fake smile vanished and was replaced by a cold stare I hadn't seen before. "Why aren't you comfortable? We are your family." "Because this is my house, my personal space. I've lived alone for 15 years, and I like my privacy." "Oh, Eleanor, don't be selfish. Aren't you ashamed to have this whole house to yourself while your son is cramped in a tiny apartment?" "Selfish? For wanting to keep the house I had paid for with my own labor? For not wanting to become a servant to my own family in my own home?" "It's not selfishness, Tiana. It's my right to decide how I live in my house." "You're right," she repeated with sarcasm. "What about your granddaughter's right to have a yard to play in? What about your son's right to live with dignity? What about your unborn grandson's right to a decent home?" Each question was like an emotional slap. I was being turned into the villain of the story, the cruel grandmother who denied a home to her innocent grandchildren. "Tiana, there are many other options. You can look for a rental house, take out a loan to buy, move to a cheaper place." "With what money, Eleanor? Marcus makes $3,200 a month. I made $1,800 when I worked, but now with the pregnancy I can't work. Where are we going to get $2,500 for rent? Then look for something cheaper, smaller, until your economic situation improves. I can't raise 2 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment. What kind of grandmother are you who prefers her own comfort over her grandchildren's well-being?" There was the emotional manipulation in all its glory. If I said no, I was a bad grandmother, a selfish woman, a heartless person who prioritized her whims over the needs of children. "Tiana, I haven't said I won't help you. I'm just saying that living together isn't the solution." "Then what is your solution? Give us money so we can rent somewhere else while you live like a queen in your castle." The idea hadn't occurred to me, but now that she mentioned it, it sounded like a reasonable alternative. "I could help you with the difference in rent for a few months until you stabilize." "Oh, Eleanor, that's not practical. How long are you going to support us? What happens when you can't work anymore? It's better if we live together. That way we all save and look after each other." "I need more time to think about it," I said, feeling like I was drowning in arguments I couldn't refute. "Well, don't take too long because we have to give an answer to the apartment complex, and Marcus is already so excited about the idea of living in a nice house after all these years of sacrifice." When they left, I sat in my recently remodeled living room and cried. I cried because I felt that no matter what I decided, I was going to lose. If I said yes, I would lose my house, my privacy, and my peace. If I said no, I would lose my family. I would become the selfish grandmother who wouldn't help when they needed it most. But there was something Tiana didn't know when she emotionally blackmailed me in my own living room. There was something Marcus hadn't considered when he said they had already decided to move in. And there was something both of them had completely underestimated about Eleanor Riggins. I had not survived 62 years, raised a son alone, and built an independent life, only to end up a prisoner in my own home. 3 days after my conversation with Tiana, I told Marcus I needed 1 more week to decide about the move. It was a lie. I had already made my decision, but I needed time to plan how to say no without becoming the family monster. I decided to take the vacation I had been postponing for 2 years. "A vacation right now, Mom?" Marcus asked with a tone of reproach. "I thought we were going to resolve the house issue this week." "Son, I need to clear my head. When I come back, I'll give you a definitive answer." I rented a small cabin in the mountains, a simple place where I could walk, read, and think without pressure. Before I left, I handed the keys to Marcus. "Please, take care of my plants in the yard. Water them every third day, especially the tomatoes, which are starting to ripen. Don't worry, Mom. We'll come with Lyric so she can play in the yard while we water." During those 7 days in the mountains, I made the most difficult decision of my life as a mother. I was going to tell them no. They could not move into my house. I would find a way to help them financially for a few months, but my home would remain my home. I practiced the speech hundreds of times while walking among the pine trees, the exact words I would use, the arguments I would give, the way to stand firm against the emotional blackmail I knew would come. I decided to return 3 days early to have time to organize my thoughts and talk to Marcus over the weekend. On Wednesday afternoon, I drove back to the city, feeling calmer than I had in weeks. But when I arrived at my house and opened the door, my world collapsed. The sound of the hammer was the first thing I heard, then the smell of fresh paint and drywall dust. My living room was unrecognizable. The walls I had painted a soft buttercream now had irregular white patches. My furniture was piled up in a corner covered with plastic tarps, and there were boxes everywhere. Tiaona was standing in the center of the chaos, holding a dripping roller as if she owned the place. Marcus was moving my favorite armchair, as if it were an obstruction, and Lyric was running between them with dirty hands, laughing as if it were all a game. "You're back early," was the first thing Marcus said, as if I had committed a crime by arriving at my own house. "I'm just doing some upgrades before we move in," Tiana announced with that smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Upgrades?" She called destroying my house without my permission an upgrade. "What are you talking about? I never said you could move in." "Oh, Eleanor. Marcus and I talked it over and decided it was best for everyone. You were taking too long to decide, and we needed to act fast." I walked like a zombie through my own house, seeing the destruction they had caused in just 3 days. In my bedroom, they had removed my bed and furniture, which were now stacked in the hallway. The walls had holes where they had removed my pictures and photographs. In the closet, they had hung clothes that weren't mine. "Where are my things?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Relax, Mom," Marcus said without looking me in the eye. "Everything is packed in boxes. We already set up your bed in the back room." The back room, my storage closet, the windowless space where I kept Christmas decorations and winter clothes, that was where they had decided I was going to live the rest of my life. I opened the door to the small room, and indeed, there was my twin bed, the one I had bought when Marcus was a teenager, crammed in between boxes piled up to the ceiling. There was no space for even a nightstand. My clothes were hung on hooks stuck to the wall, and my shoes were in plastic bags on the floor. "This is unacceptable," I murmured. "What did you say, Eleanor?" Tiauna had appeared behind me, still holding the roller, white paint dripping onto the floor I had installed so carefully. "I said this is unacceptable. This is my house. You can't make decisions without consulting me." "Eleanor, don't be dramatic. It's just a temporary reorganization while we all get settled." Temporary? They had already removed all my furniture from my own bedroom. "Well, we need more space for the baby that's coming. Your twin bed wouldn't fit alongside our queen bed and the crib." The crib. They already had a white crib with pink teddy bears in my bedroom, placed exactly where I used to have my dresser with the mirror where I got ready every morning before work. "Tiana, I never gave permission for this." "Oh, Eleanor, stop the drama. Marcus is your son. This house is his by right, too." "This house is not Marcus's. It's deeded in my name. I paid for it completely. I made all the improvements." "But he's your only son. Sooner or later, he's going to inherit everything. We're just moving things up a bit." Moving things up. She was planning my death to justify invading my house. Marcus approached when he heard our voices rise. "Mom, calm down. I know it's a big change, but you'll see. We're going to be great all together." "Marcus, I want you to get all of your things out of my house right now." "Mom, we can't do that. We already gave up our apartment." "What do you mean you already gave up the apartment?" "We're out of the lease, Mom. The new tenant already moved in." I gasped. Not only had they invaded my house without permission, but they had burned their own bridges so that I would have no choice but to accept them. "You planned this from the beginning," I said, feeling utterly betrayed. "Mom, don't look at it that way. We thought it was better to act while you were gone so you wouldn't have to deal with the stress of the move." The stress of the move. The stress was arriving at my house and finding it invaded. Lyric ran closer and hugged my legs with her paint-stained little hands. "Grandma, did you see my new room? Dad said I'm going to live here with you forever." Forever. Those words pierced me like a dagger. It wasn't a temporary move. It wasn't a few months of family help. It was a permanent occupation of my home, my life, my future. "Eleanor," Tiana said, lowering her voice and moving closer, as if we were confidants. "I understand it's hard to adapt to changes at your age, but think about it. You'll have your family close. You'll be able to help with your grandchildren, and we'll take care of you when necessary." "I don't need to be taken care of." "Not for now, but you're getting older. What will happen in a few years when you can't work anymore? What will happen if you get sick and you're alone in this big house?" Again, the same argument, turning me into a helpless old woman to justify stealing my independence. "Besides," Tiana continued, "we're going to help with all the house expenses, utilities, maintenance, repairs. You won't have to worry about anything anymore." That was the last straw. They wanted to make me feel like they were doing me a favor by invading my house. "I want you to leave," I said with all the firmness I could muster. "Mom, don't be like this," Marcus pleaded. "We're already here. Everything is settled. Give this new chapter a chance." "I don't want a new chapter. I want my house back." "Eleanor," Tiana said with that condescending smile I hated so much, "why don't you sleep on it? Tomorrow you'll see things differently." That night, lying in the twin bed in my old storage room, surrounded by boxes and unable to even turn on the light because the switch was blocked by a pile of clothes, I made a decision that would change everything. I took out my cell phone and dialed a number I had saved months ago but never thought I would use. "Attorney Sterling Davenport, Jr. This is Eleanor Riggins, the lady who bought your father, Mr. Davenport's house. I need your help urgently." The next day, when Marcus and Tiana woke up in my bedroom, believing they had won the war, they were going to discover that they had completely underestimated who they were messing with. On Thursday morning, while Marcus and Tiana slept peacefully in my bed as if it were theirs, I was already awake at 5 a.m., preparing the most important counterattack of my life. I had spent the night wide awake, not only because of the discomfort of sleeping in an unventilated room among dusty boxes, but because my mind was working at full speed, planning every detail of what I was going to do. At 6 in the morning, I left the house without making a sound. I had 3 important appointments that day, and none of them knew about the situation yet. My first stop was the office of Attorney Sterling Davenport, Jr., the son of the man who had sold me the house 15 years ago. His office was downtown, in an old but elegant building where several lawyers shared space. I arrived exactly at 8 a.m., just as they were opening. "Ms. Riggins," Attorney Davenport greeted me, a man in his 50s with the same honest face as his father. "You mentioned something about problems with your property on the phone." I explained the whole situation, how my son and daughter-in-law had invaded my house without permission, taking advantage of my vacation, how they had destroyed walls and moved all my furniture, and how they had gotten rid of their apartment to force me to accept the situation. "Did you at any time give them written permission to move in or make modifications to the property?" he asked as he took notes. "Never. I never signed anything. I never gave definitive verbal consent. I only left them the keys to water my plants." "And did they financially contribute to the purchase or improvements of the house?" "Marcus helped me with $200 a month for 2 years when he was single, but that was more than 5 years ago. Since he got married, he hasn't contributed anything to the house. On the contrary, I lent them more than $18,000 that they never paid back." Attorney Davenport reviewed the deed to the house that I had brought. Everything was perfectly in order. The property was registered solely in my name, with no debts, no encumbrances, and no other names on the documents. "Ms. Riggins, legally, you have every right to recover your property. What they are doing is called unlawful detainer and vandalism. We can proceed in two ways: through the civil court, which is slower but less confrontational, or through the criminal court, filing a report for property invasion and damage. Which one do you recommend? Given that they have already destroyed part of your property and refuse to leave voluntarily, I would recommend the criminal path. It's faster and more effective. What do you need from me? First, we will draw up a notarized affidavit of the current state of the property, documenting all the damages. Then, we file the report with the district attorney's DA's office. And finally, we request that the authorities issue a dispossession order. How long will that take? If all goes well, they could be out of your house in about a week. I signed all the necessary documents and paid his retainer, $5,000, which represented a whole month of work at the dental clinic, but which was worth it to reclaim my freedom. My second stop was the nearest notary public. The notary, Mr. Jonathan Vance, came with me at 11 in the morning to document the state of the property. Marcus and Tiana were not there. They had gone out with Lyric to buy more paint and construction materials. The notary photographed every damage: the destroyed walls, the holes in the drywall, my furniture piled up, my belongings packed in boxes. He also documented that they had changed the distribution of the bedrooms without my authorization and had installed their own furniture in spaces that belonged to my exclusive use. "Ma'am, this is clearly a case of damage to property and trespassing," he said while writing the affidavit. "Do you have any witnesses that you never gave authorization for these modifications?" "Yes, my neighbor Lucille was present when I told them I needed time to think about it, and my coworker Lorena heard me say I wasn't sure about the decision." "Perfect. We will include that information in the document." By the time we finished the notarized affidavit, it was already 1 in the afternoon. My third stop was the most important, the DA's office, where I would file the formal complaint. The prosecutor who handled my case, Ms. Rochelle King, was a young but experienced woman who had dealt with similar cases. "Ms. Riggins, what you are describing to me is aggravated unlawful detainer and vandalism because, in addition to the illegal seizure of your property, they caused material damage," she explained while reviewing the documents I had brought. "What happens next?" "We are going to issue a formal summons for them to appear before this office. If they do not show up voluntarily, or if they refuse to vacate the property, then we will proceed with a warrant for their arrest and a court-ordered eviction." "How long do I have to wait?" "The summons will be delivered tomorrow, Friday. They have 24 hours to present themselves. If they do not, we will have the eviction order ready by Monday morning." That afternoon, I returned home feeling a mix of nerves and satisfaction. For the first time in days, I felt like I was in control of the situation. Marcus and Tiana had returned and were continuing their remodeling project as if nothing were wrong. They had bought more paint, new rollers, and even an electric drill to make more holes in my walls. "Mom, where were you all day?" Marcus asked when he saw me arrive. "Running some personal errands," I replied. "Have you gotten used to the idea of all of us living together?" Tiana asked me with that irritating fake smile. "You'll see, it's going to be so nice to have the house full of family." "We'll see," I replied, and I went to my storage room to wait. On Friday morning, exactly at 9 a.m., the doorbell rang. Marcus opened the door and found 2 men in formal suits. "Marcus Riggins?" one of them asked. "Yes, that's me." "We are from the DA's office. We have a summons for you and for Ms. Tiana Riggins." From my room, I heard Marcus's voice crack. "A summons? Why?" "For the unlawful detainer of private property. You have 24 hours to present yourselves at the DA's office," Tiana shouted from the kitchen. "Unlawful detainer? What are they talking about? This is my husband's family home." "Ma'am, the complaint was filed by the legal owner of this dwelling, Ms. Eleanor Riggins. If you have any clarification to make, you must present yourselves tomorrow at 9 a.m. with all the documents that support your right to remain on this property." When the process servers left, Marcus knocked on my door. "Mom, you were the one who filed this complaint." I opened the door and looked him straight in the eyes. Yes, it was me. "How could you do this to your own family? How could you invade my house without my permission?" Tiana ran over, her face red with fury. "You're crazy! We are your family! You can't sue us!" "Yes, I can, and I already did." "Mom, this is a misunderstanding." Marcus tried to mediate. "We can fix this by talking. Withdraw the complaint, and we'll negotiate a solution that works for everyone." "The solution that works for me is for you to get out of my house. Where do you want us to go with 2 children and no money? That's a problem you should have thought about before getting rid of your apartment without my authorization." Tiana was shaking with rage. "You are a bitter, selfish old woman. You'd rather be alone in your big house than help your own family." "I prefer my peace over being a prisoner in my own house." That night, Marcus begged me to withdraw the complaint. He offered to pay me rent. He promised they would repair all the damage. He swore it would be temporary until they found another house, but it was already too late. The trust was broken, and I had discovered what they were capable of when they thought they could manipulate me. On Saturday morning, they did not show up at the DA's office. On Monday at 10 a.m., when Tiana was comfortably sitting in my new kitchen drinking coffee as if she were the owner of the house, the doorbell rang. "Why are there 2 lawyers and a police officer at our door?" she asked Marcus over the phone when it was too late to stop what she herself had provoked. "Because it's no longer your house," I replied before hanging up. When the police officer and the 2 lawyers entered my house that Monday morning, Tiana froze in the kitchen with her coffee cup in her hands, as if she couldn't process what she was seeing. Marcus ran out of the bathroom half-dressed, still with shaving cream on his face. "What is the meaning of this, Mom?" he shouted at me, as if I were the one to blame. Attorney Sterling Davenport Jr. calmly identified himself. "Good morning. We are here to execute a court-ordered eviction for illegal occupation of private property. You have 2 hours to collect your personal belongings and vacate the premises." "This is an outrage," Tiana screamed, finally reacting. "This is a family home. I have rights as a daughter-in-law." "Ma'am, the only rights you have are those granted to you by the legal owner of this dwelling," replied the second lawyer, who had introduced himself as Mr. Vance, a representative of the court process. "And according to the complaint filed and the evidence gathered, you occupied this property without authorization and caused material damage." Marcus looked at me with an expression I had never seen on his face. A mixture of pain, anger, and disbelief that broke my heart, but did not make me change my mind. "Mom, we're your family, your own blood. How can you throw us onto the street?" "The same blood that invaded my house without permission, destroyed my walls, moved my furniture, and sent me to sleep in a room without windows," I replied, with a voice firmer than I felt inside. "But we were going to take care of you," Marcus insisted. "We were going to be a united family." "A united family is not imposed by force, son." The police officer, a senior officer named Commander Derek Owens, had seen similar cases before. He addressed Marcus and Tiana with a paternal but firm tone. "Look, folks, I understand this is difficult, but the law is very clear. This lady is the legal owner of the dwelling and has the right to decide who lives here and who doesn't. You can sort out your family differences in private, but right now you need to leave the property." "We have nowhere to go!" Tiana screamed, and for the first time in 5 years, I saw her cry for real. They weren't tears of manipulation, they were tears of genuine panic. "I'm pregnant! I have an 8-year-old girl! You can't leave us on the street!" For a moment, just for a moment, I felt my resolve waver. Seeing Lyric confused and scared, clinging to her mother's leg, hurt me more than I expected. "Grandma," my granddaughter said to me, her eyes full of tears, "don't you love me anymore? You don't want me to live with you?" Those words went through my chest like a dagger, but I took a deep breath and reminded myself why I was doing this. "I love you very much, sweetie, but your parents made decisions without asking me, and now they have to face the consequences." Tiana approached me with a pleading attitude, completely different from the arrogant woman I had known for 5 years. "Eleanor, please, give us a chance. I promise everything will be different. We will respect your space. We will help with all the expenses. We will repair everything we damaged." Tiona, you had 5 years to respect me. 5 years to treat me like family instead of an employee. 5 years to value everything I did for you. But now it will be different. I swear it on my children. Oaths are made before you break trust, not after. Marcus approached and tried to take my hands, but I pulled away. Mom, please withdraw the complaint. I promise we will look for another solution. We just need time. Your time ran out when you decided to invade my house. Attorney Davenport intervened. Folks, half an hour has passed. You have 90 minutes to collect your things. What followed was a chaos of tears, shouts, and boxes. Marcus and Tiona ran all over the house, packing clothes, Lyric's toys, and the few belongings they had brought. Tiona cried as she folded baby clothes she had bought for the room that would never be hers. Where are we going to store all this? Marcus asked his wife as he loaded boxes into a taxi they had called. I don't know, Tiona repeated between sobs. Maybe at my sister's house for a few days. Lyric came up to me one last time before leaving. Grandma, can I come visit you on Sundays? Before I could answer, Tiona took her hand abruptly. No, honey, we're not coming to this house anymore. Why not? Because your grandmother prefers to be alone than to have her family close. It was her final attempt at manipulation, using the child to make me feel guilty. But I had already learned to recognize her tactics. When they finally walked out the door, dragging suitcases and carrying boxes, Marcus turned back to me one last time. Mom, I hope you're happy with your decision, but remember that families aren't rebuilt easily after something like this. And you remember that families also aren't built by trampling over their members, I replied. The taxi drove off with them inside, and my house fell silent for the first time in a week. But it was a different silence from before. It was a heavy silence, loaded with irreversible decisions and broken relationships. The following days were the hardest, not because I missed having them in my house, but because I missed the illusion of having a functional family. It hurt to know that Lyric would likely grow up thinking her grandmother was a cruel woman who threw them out of their home. Marcus called me 3 times that first week. The first 2 times were to insult me, to tell me I was an unnatural mother who had destroyed her family over a whim. The third time, a week later, his voice sounded different. Mom, we found an apartment. It's small, but it's clean, and the price is fair. I'm glad, son. Tiona wants you to know that she doesn't forgive you. She says she will never speak to you again. I understand. And do you forgive them? The question caught me by surprise. For days, I had been thinking about whether I needed forgiveness, not whether I should forgive. I forgive them, Marcus, but that doesn't mean I will allow it to happen again. Can I come visit you? This will always be your home, provided you come with respect. 3 months have passed since the eviction. Marcus comes to visit me on Sundays alone, and little by little, we are rebuilding an adult relationship based on mutual respect. He tells me Tiona is doing well, that the pregnancy is progressing without problems, and that Lyric has adapted to the new school. I don't ask about Tiona, and he doesn't give me details. Some bridges are completely burned, and that's okay. My house is once again my sanctuary. I repaired the damaged walls, put my furniture back in its place, and planted new flowers in the garden. Every morning, I wake up in my own bed, eat breakfast in my new kitchen, and go to work knowing that I will return to a home that is truly mine. Sometimes my neighbors ask me if I get lonely living alone at my age. I tell them that chosen solitude is very different from imposed company, that there is a huge difference between being alone and being a prisoner in your own house. I have learned that defending your boundaries does not make you a bad person, even if others make you feel that way. That family who emotionally blackmails you isn't family. It's manipulation disguised as love. And above all, I have learned that at 62, I still have the right to make decisions about my own life, even if others don't like them. Some nights when I sit in my remodeled living room watching a crime drama, I think about Lyric and wonder if she will ever understand why her grandmother had to choose between being respected and being loved. I hope so. I hope that when she is a grown woman, she will understand that her grandmother taught her the most important lesson of all, that nobody, not even family, has the right to steal your peace. The silence in my house is no longer heavy. Now, it is liberating. It is the sound of a woman who finally learned that choosing herself is not selfishness. It is survival. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.
By the end of this story, I won't lie. There's a certain satisfaction in seeing arrogance collapse under its own weight. This wasn't just a fall. It was a consequence. When someone builds their life on someone else's sacrifices and then chooses betrayal, losing everything isn't tragedy. It's the result. My personal view on this ending is clear. This wasn't too harsh, it was necessary. Because people who forget where they came from usually have to learn the hard way what they've lost. Now, I will guide you through what you can learn from this situation in detail. This is especially useful for people who give too much, tolerate disrespect, or stay loyal even when the other side clearly isn't. First, practical actions. Always be aware of your real position, emotionally, financially, and legally. Don't depend completely on someone who doesn't respect you. Pay attention to small changes in behavior. Disrespect rarely appears suddenly, it builds over time. When you notice repeated patterns, don't ignore them. Step back, reassess, and protect your position early. Second, psychological insight. People who take advantage of others often mistake kindness for weakness. The more they get away with, the more entitled they feel. Over time, this creates a mindset where they believe they won't face consequences, until everything collapses at once. Third, emotional control. Staying calm doesn't mean you accept the situation. It means you're choosing clarity over chaos. Reacting emotionally might feel powerful in the moment, but it often leads to worse outcomes. Control your response, and you control the direction of what happens next. Fourth, life skills. Gratitude is not optional. It's the foundation of any lasting relationship. Never build your life around someone who only values you when it benefits them. And most importantly, set boundaries early, before respect turns into exploitation. What this story really teaches us is simple. Loyalty should never be one-sided. And once respect is broken, no amount of history can rebuild what's already gone. So what do you think? Was this justice or just the natural outcome of bad choices? And if you were in that position, would you have done anything differently?